So just welcome, guys. I just thought, I'd pop on as I'm sitting here practicing in front of the camera for this interview. And I was like, you know what? What could I talk about? I could talk about what it means to, make yourself stretch, to do things that make you a little bit uncomfortable because I did this training back in about 3 years ago called the Jack Canfield Success Training. And it was great, really overpriced. But at the time, I was like, oh, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, these are like um, side tangent. Sarah's saying she likes my necklaces. And yeah, when Finn died, my husband, I ended up going through, well, really the past 4 years, like whenever there was a nice opportunity for like a special occasion, that's how I ended up treating myself to be like, I'm special, I'm worthy, and I deserve to wear a little bit of gold. Gold being what I believe sort of the like the mineral form of love for the earth, and it just holds the sun's sort of frequency and love. So it also makes you, because it's expensive, if you wear some of it, you end up feeling a little bit like you're um I don't know, taking care of yourself or splurging or all the things that I feel like is hard for us to do for ourselves as humans, to take care of ourselves and to sort of invest in ourselves. It's not something we're taught to do. We're taught to self-sacrifice. And yeah. So anyway, talking about putting myself out there. So my story is I decided that I wanted to move to Spain. And I lived in Italy and did my undergrad there, and I was there for almost 6 years. And I have 4 kids now. For those of you who maybe aren't following my writing yet or anything, but um, I'd always wanted to take the kids to live abroad because I have lived abroad in multiple countries, and I feel like, the world is our oyster if we can make it work. And I've, lived in India with my mom when I was 11 for a year in an ashram. And then I did I did a gap year in Wales working with special needs kids in this garden. And then I did my Italy years. And so then I had kids and got really locked in over the past 2 decades because I have two sets of kids, and my oldest is almost 20 and my youngest is 7. So just been raising babies. Um, and, but I'd always wanted to take them abroad. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to Spain because Spanish is a great language, and let's do it. Let's do something new and different. And, yeah, but then I realized that it's actually sort of hard to immigrate to a place like Spain, and it's a little crazy. So anyway, here I got all, put the cart before the horse, as I like to say, in that I committed to like the kids getting into a school there and found an apartment and started the whole visa process, not realizing that they don't actually give visas out that easily during the summer unless you're a student. So then I decided, well, I was a teacher for a while and been writing on Substack. And as you guys probably are too, like we all have these dreams like, oh yeah, I'll just go on Substack and get a bunch of people to subscribe and pay money, and I'll have I'll become a author. And it's hard to be an entrepreneur. It's hard to be an author, but I do it for me. It's part of the healing journey. But anyway, now because I couldn't get the visa, I'm like, oh, I could become a student. I could get a second master's because my other master's is in education. And I was like, I could get a master's in Spain. It's cheaper to go to school there than it is here. And so that's what I'm currently trying to figure out how to do. So I'm sitting here and I was like practicing. I've written out all my notes in Spanish and Espanol, and preparing for this interview in Espanol, even though I'm not really very good at speaking Espanol yet, but I do speak Italian fluently. And so that was to my original point of sometimes you just got to throw yourself out there. You got to jump into the deep end. And what I was going to say about Jack Canfield and the training I did that I spent way too much money doing because I cool, thanks. Yeah, it was all good. But anyway, I did this training and I was like, no, there's no way I could go online and like put myself out there, do a platform or try to like help others if I don't have some sort of credential. So I did this training and it was super helpful. But one of the things that he said was about how if you're not uncomfortable or you're not scared, you're probably not putting yourself, like, you're probably not dreaming big enough, is I think what the phrase he uses. So, and being uncomfortable, I just wrote a note about it, like being in that place of stretch, being in that place of like pushing yourself, not in an unhealthy way, but just in like a, you know, put yourself out there. It can be uncomfortable. Is it easy to learn Italian? I mean, I think any language, I'm not necessarily a language person, even though now I'm, going to maybe speak three if you include Spanish getting up to speed. But I mean, it took me like a full 2 years of living in Italy, being surrounded only by Italians to get up to that level. And then, some people I know, like they'll go for a year or two to a foreign country, like doing Peace Corps or something, and then like I've had this friend who did Peace Corps like years and years ago and got strong enough Spanish that he became a Spanish teacher in the private school where I used to teach. And that's just not me. Like, if I'm not immersed in the language, it's really hard for it to stay sort of in my mind. And I end up, um, not being able to really speak it. So for me, it's all about immersion. And so, like, when I decided, oh shit, like, I'm not going to be able to get a visa if I don't apply as a student. Hi, Ani, welcome. I'm just talking about learning languages and putting yourself out there and like allowing yourself to stretch when things feel allowing things to be a little uncomfortable. Um, because like if you're not uncomfortable, then I mean you don't want to be uncomfortable in like a bad way. Like you don't want to be self-sacrificing. And I talk about this too, like cold comfort for change. Like you don't want to be in the cold comfort situation where you're just like accepting the bare minimum. At the same time, if you can go through towards that like that growth edge where you're like, okay, I'm going to push my edge. I'm going to push myself into an area that's uncomfortable because I know that there's going to be real growth there, then that's sort of what we're looking to do. But it can be scary as fuck, as they say. A little bit of cussing. It can be scary to put yourself out there. So anyway, I've been sort of scared shitless about this interview that I'm going to be doing in Spanish and trying to figure out all the things that I need to say in Spanish, which I don't really speak that well, but it's really similar to Italian. So, anyway, that's what I was sitting here doing. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go on live. And I never come on. I'm in Colorado. So it's like 11:30. Last night I had to take this. It's called a prueba, and it was an exam for the masters, and it was because it was held at 10 a.m. in Spain. Yeah, it's sort of scary, But anyway, so this online test was held at 10 a.m. in Spain. So that was 2 in the morning, Colorado time. So I was up at 2 in the morning, logged on with all these people from Spain, and they're like in her Spanish, like speaking really, really fast, like, "Are you all ready?" And I'm like, "Oh goodness." And I didn't want to like ask a question because then I knew I would stumble. And anyway, so we had to take this online test, and I was like, I did it. Yeah, so I've just been like putting myself out there, and it's really scary, but I'm just doing it. And hopefully I'll get in, and then we can actually go get our visa and move to Spain. And then I'm going to start writing about what it's like to live in Spain, because I feel like so far I've been talking and writing about the healing journey. Because hi Michael, welcome. I've been yeah, so I lost my husband to cancer 4 years ago, and then that's been huge because he was my soulmate. And but then at the same time, um, about a year after that, had some really intense sort of dissociative amnesia. Hello, sort of came up for me, and I had, trauma memories resurface. And so it's just been a lot of healing, a lot of just feeling like I'm in that hermit mode, which I feel like you might relate to. Like, I feel like since COVID, a lot of us have been a little bit hunkered down, like the whole world sort of stopped and fell apart in certain ways, or it was the beginning. Like, I feel like from like sort of a spiritual perspective, we talk about the beginning of the unraveling, and all the unraveling has to happen because I subscribe to the idea that we are actually birthing a new earth, and we are becoming, as a planet, we're upgrading, and we're sort of moving through, like, we've been in centuries and sort of epochs of oppression and just sort of like there's something called the Kali Yuga, but basically like I could get very esoteric, but like basically our just like we go around the sun, our sun is spinning in our galaxy, sort of like everything's moving, right? But we have been in what the ancient Vedic scholars talk about, this sort of dark era where we've been farther away from like the center, like the central sun or like one of the big stars. Now I'm not an astronomer, but I do know it from like an esoteric perspective. That being said, it's a lens through which to work with the fact that we as an earth have been in a very dark time, which I think you don't really need to study Vedic astrology to know we have been in a very dark way, right? Under a lot of forces of oppression and a lot of like humanity feeling and being very oppressed. And we're now coming out of that time, and supposedly we're coming into what's supposed to be the golden era and like a lot more enlightened energy coming onto our planet and like a time of awakened consciousness. So a lot of people are waking up. And COVID was sort of this like reset where it was like all of a sudden it began to shake up the systems that had been sort of just like chronically dialed in these really dysfunctional ways. Um my I'm speaking on my phone speaker, so it might be sort of garbled. Sorry if it is. And also, I don't know, I didn't even realize like my internet, I might be really blurry, which is probably not a good thing. But I just realized I probably shouldn't have been. I should have been on my wireless and not the internet. But hopefully, I look clear to me. But then whenever I do my playbacks, that's super blurry. So also, I'm just saying, hopefully, the air conditioning, you can still hear me. Um, anyway, yeah. So we're in an awakening time, and I think that COVID created this beginning of beginning to see like the great reveal. Yes, not blurry. Okay, I think it actually is good to be online this time of night, like middle of the night, compared to when I try to do this during the day. And there's can never get my lives to do anything good. In the replays, they're always like glitch, glitch, blur, blur. Yay, loud and clear. Woohoo! Thanks, guys. Anyway, so like yeah. So we're in this time of awakening, and the systems that would have us like stay asleep, this sort of, people talk about, I love to talk about it as like the false matrix, or like people that sort of track these things in more of a spiritual lens of like that everything in earth has been in this sort of inversion, which is basically oh yes, esoteric's good. But like that the inversion is just sort of like the opposite, like everything on earth in this like very dense material plane is sort of opposite and inverted from the way that it's supposed to be. So like it's all a great learning experience, which is why it's earth school. And they say that like, you know, I always say souls don't even come here unless you're really courageous, because you have to basically your essence gets so condensed into these human forms that are also biological bodies that experience death and experience all of the things that make the survival brain that wants to keep us alive. And then the trauma that happens because we're all living through generational trauma because our parents and their parents before them have been living in this dark way that I was talking about, where humans are hurting each other constantly. And so if you're going to heal and wake up from that, it's not going to be pretty, it's going to be messy. And so I think when things get messy, they can be painful. And I think that also there's so much that encourages the sort of being asleep and being sort of forgetfulness, like how you come in forgetting that your soul is actually having a human experience. And so you end up just identifying, and there's all these things in society in the world that would encourage you to identify only with the material plane, only with the physical form, only in that survival brain, which is that sort of like being flooded with, you know, adrenaline and cortisol and all the stress hormones that we're trying to keep ourselves alive and keep ourselves almost like we're tented in trying to just survive, like, with like all this craziness raining down all around us. And yet, that wasn't what we were meant to do. That's not our destiny. That is not what we came here for. So you got to stretch like a rubber band. Just let yourself stretch out a little bit and get yourself into a position where you can feel safe. Um, and that is easier said than done. But like to me, feeling safe is the first thing you have to be able to do if you're going to expand. And if you're going to move into your destiny and like in a place of empowerment, you have to be able to feel safe. And if you are in relationships with people that don't support you, that are maybe what we call more karmic relationships, that are could be family, could be partnership, could be work, could be friendship. But if you are in situations where you are not being really with people that can't love themselves, if you're enmeshed with people that haven't learned how to really sort of get out of that amnesia sort of forgetful place of like that it's not like the whole herders like the where people just recapitulate pain and they're acting out of this like trauma place where everyone's just, I always think of it as like ships in the night just like bumping into other ships in the darkness and there's this like fog, and what you need to do is become a lighthouse and look for other lighthouses. So, in order to do that, though, you have to find that rocky outcropping. Like, you actually have to like build your lighthouse. Like there's that saying of like you don't want to build your house on sand. You have to build it on solid rock. And what is your rock? Well, your rock has to be yourself. And in order to find yourself, which is really this vessel, this human vessel, but you can't just have yourself in the small s egoic mind of like eye for an eye and that sort of trauma brain, survival brain. It has to be from the frontal lobe, which is the uniquely human part of our brain, is the wise brain, the part of us that can think, that can take a pause, that can not just jump into the trauma response, but that can really sort of hold a an idea of yourself and of the world that allows for compassion, that allows that hooks up when you begin to operate from like your frontal brain, or your like we even think of as like the third eye. When you begin to allow yourself to follow your intuition, use an inner sight that is also connected to your heart, and to sort of operate from a place of love and compassion between here and here, and also safety goes all the way down to the root chakra. Like when you can begin to feel safe in your body, then magical things can start to happen. And in order for us to feel safe in our bodies, we have to we have to walk away from situations and get out of that cold comfort place with people where we might not be honored for who we are. And, it might be uncomfortable to have to put up boundaries and step away from people, and also step into places that are uncomfortable in yourself. You might have to let go of habits that you realize as you begin to wake up. There's the saying, know better, do better. So it's like instead of shame spiraling when you make a mistake, like healing is messy, you might have to just get your hands muddy in this sort of soup of becoming. And it might be messy as you learn to sort of step away from certain habits and certain choices and certain people, but begin to listen to like what's buried underneath all the programming, all the I'm not good enough, I must be doing it wrong, who am I to deserve better, all the programming that we had from our wounded parents and their wounded or caregivers or whatever. And yeah, so like, and then on a global level, like it's happening around us, things, the structures are breaking down. Like it doesn't really look like it. It looks more chaotic than ever and darker than ever because the powers that be want you to stay in this sort of illusion of disempowerment, that like we have no say and that it really is just there for the taking. And then there are these power grabs happening all around us. But really people are waking up like you and me, and we're beginning to stretch in all the right ways, and yeah, and then it's like being uncomfortable, and some of it is also learning that like we're human. So I just wrote a note about this. Like part of me, like I want to know, like, am I doing it right? Like, like with my writing or whatever, like there's been a bit of a lull where I'm like, I'm not getting as much engagement, not as many people are watching, because I've poured a lot of time and energy onto Substack lately, in addition to being a mom. And I start to be like, is it something I'm doing? Like I must, maybe I'm doing it wrong, or maybe I wrote about something I shouldn't have, or maybe people are bored of hearing my same stories and all the like, what if, making it about us. And it's like, what if it has nothing to do with any of that? What if I'm just like, keep doing me, you keep doing you, and your people will find you and you'll find your way. Um, yeah, so it's like it's sort of unwinding from some of these narratives that would have us believing that that it's our fault, or that we're not doing something right, or that we have to be perfect. And it's about, just showing up, continuing to show up. And so that's sort of why I came on tonight. I was like, you know what, I haven't done my weekly live yet, and I want to go on and say hi to whoever's here listening. And I've never done it at this time of night, and why the hell not? so so yeah, I don't know, just came on to sort of ponder the yonder, as I like to say. And and I think that, I'm really getting clear that I want to be of service. And I've always been about that, wanting to be of service. And it's like, for a while, I had this sort of, I wasn't depressed maybe in like a clinical sense, but I had this deep grief that I've been navigating since Finn died. And then the trauma healing, from the memories of abuse in my childhood. And so it's just been a really dark window of time, these past 4 years or so, or 5 years. And I feel like maybe I'm coming out of it. And I think some of us are. I think beginning to maybe see a tiny thread of hope or light at the end of the tunnel, even though if you look around at the media and the world around us, things are crumbling. But I think that we're also beginning to build and to collaborate and to find others that are on this healing path, and that want to see a different world, and that are willing to be uncomfortable and not just in cycles of addiction or self-sabotaging behavior. But yeah, like for me, it's like as much as I healed, then I realized like the parts of me that were still operating as the victim, and finding, like recently I talk a lot about this. Like I had, started doing some online dating, and then just realizing that I was being magnetized towards the same wounded individuals who are pretty dissociated from what's actually going on. So there's like a lot of just fakeness. And I just tend to find a lot of humans, I do think, operate from these masks and these personalities that they think they're being, they have so completely identified with this mask, this egoic mask of personality, like all these sort of like layers of who they thought they needed to be. And then what happens is they forget like that centered, heartfelt place inside. And so if you're wounded too, you end up just, it's like these masks and these performances like happening. And it's like, well, what's underneath that? And so for me, it's about, learning how to become more authentic, learning to feel like, what is actually driving? Is it the wound driving me? Because if it's my wound of the little girl who didn't have the nurturing she needed, um, yeah, tools are needed to help rewrite the scripts. And yeah, so true. For me, it was like doing, some plant medicine journeying, that I just went on this retreat, that was super powerful. And some people are like, that's not the modality for them, but like therapy, somatic healing, being in nature, journaling, just having like a general mindset of awareness, and of being able to like ask. For me, it's about having a certain attitude of cultivating a curiosity. Like when you begin to feel out of sorts, being able to ask, like, why am I feeling this? When did I maybe first feel this? What could be underneath? Like diving within to like that soup of human emotion, and beginning to ask harder questions, so that we don't just continue to operate from these scripts that don't really serve us. But yeah, because I was up till 3 in the morning taking the Spanish test last night, I am a bit tired, and I was like, I'll just go on for a short live tonight. And I didn't even know if anyone was going to join me, but I appreciate you guys that are here, the five of you. Thank you for coming, joining me for this little almost midnight chat. I don't know where you guys are and what time zones you're at, but yeah, thanks for being here. And yeah. Love you guys. Hope you have a good rest of your evening. If you're in the US side of things, it's probably nighttime wherever you are, unless you're on the other side of the world. But hope you have a good night. And yeah, love you guys. Thank you.